Right to Shadow King Nazru, and I'm here with my review of She-Hulk Episode 3. So, we had the first episode that did a terrible job uh, adapting the origins of She-Hulk, with her getting her powers in a different way, and which also caused a huge amount of character development for Bruce Banner, which he seriously needs in the MCU, though at this point it's too late to save him. With She-Hulk acting very disrespectful and was somewhat resentful to her cousin, the Hulk, feeling that he's ruined her life, which is again opposite of the comics where she was grateful for him giving her these powers because it gave allowed her to do things she wasn't able to do as Jen Walters, and she felt a sense of empowerment from it. Not to mention some of the misandrous moments, along with other issues. Then we had episode 2 that, aside from She-Hulk being working with a new law firm that's going to have her working specifically on superheroes and supervillain cases, nothing else of consequence happened. Aside from, yeah, she's also going to be representing the Abomination, which we cut that to episode 3. So Jen confronts Emil Blonsky about escaping from prison, which is going to affect his ability to get parole. Might even cancel that. But he pretty much explains that he was taken out of the prison against his will by Wong, which is supposed to align with the whole Shang-Chi scene where he and Abomination had a cage match fight. Yeah, it was pretty stupid. Not to mention, I highly, not to mention watching that scene, I really doubt that the Abomination would be knocked out by one of his own punches, considering he fights with the Hulk on the regular basis and should be able to at the very least take up one of his own punches. But let's not get into that. But he said that he returned of his own free will and that the case should still be going through. Yeah, but there's still the whole issue that even though you say you've changed, you feel bad about yourself, um, and you say that you're reformed, that still doesn't cover the fact that you did a lot of horrible things. Now, granted, you may have a case that you were under the influence of experimental drugs, I mean the super soldier formula, the experiment by the military, and that might have caused your judgment to be in lapse. So at the very least, you might be able to get a reduced sentence and maybe some therapy. But as for release on parole, that's kind of pushing it. Then again, Jessica Gao pretty much admitted that her and her writing team don't know how to write rousing trials or basically know the basics of legal procedures during trials. So I wouldn't expect that. Not to say that I'm a law expert myself, but let's not get into it, shall we? So yeah, they're gonna try to salvage this whole parole case for the Abomination, and but first they need to contact Wong to admit that he took the Abomination out of his cell, and they do that by laying down a thirst trap uh, for Wong by She-Hulk's Latina. I think she's Latina. I probably could research what the actress's race is, but honestly, I got so many other issues with this show, and I honestly don't care enough to look. Anyway, her best friend lays down a thirst trap to get Wong to come to her, so that She-Hulk can get the proof that he released the Abomination. Now one might think that it's kind of hypocritical for a woman to lay a thirst trap for a man when there's a lot of complaint that men lay down thirst traps for women. And that's because it is hypocritical. But this wouldn't be the first time that this show has been rather hypocritical, nor will it be the last, as we'll later on see in this review. And while that is going on, the guy from She-Hulk's old law firm is coming to She-Hulk for help because uh, because he apparently believed he was dating a woman, Megan the Stallion, but it turns out that it was actually a shapeshifter from Asgard who was only pretending to be the woman. And everybody doubts that because no one will be gullible enough to think that they were actually dating the Megan the Stallion, and they make a whole big deal about Megan Thee Stallion being involved in this, or potentially being involved in this, treating like everybody should know who Megan Thee Stallion is. And there's no way that this guy could possibly go enough to believe that he had a shot with her. Now, if you're all wondering who's Megan Thee Stallion, don't don't worry. A lot of other people didn't know who Megan Thee Stallion was before this episode, including myself. Apparently, she's some rapper who grew up in Houston, Texas, and is relatively famous. Um, she's known for her rapping, freestyle, being very provocative, and she's also she's also been known to be bisexual, and has said some rather controversial comments on Twitter, mostly about upsetting men. So she's a bit of a misandrist as well, which pretty much fits right well with this show's themes. Did I also mention that her grandmother died of cancer? Yeah, I'm sure she's real proud of her granddaughter's life choices. So yeah, basically the guy from She-Hulk's old law firm. I think it's that one guy who was making misogynistic comments about women. Basically, a straw man for the She-Hulk writers to project their views of misogyny on a character. He's basically asking her for help, and and it's also really ridiculous that a lot of people are skeptical about this, that a person could be fooled into believing that they're dating a celebrity. Shapeshifters aren't exactly foreign to the MCU. I mean, we've had Loki, who is known for shapeshifting, and if you want to go into like Marvel material in general, we have Mystique, who has shapeshifted. I mean, if you look at the X-Men movies, She-Hulk fooled. I mean, not She-Hulk. Mystique fooled the entire United States into believing she was Senator Kelly. So it's not a big stretch that a shapeshifter can deceive anyone. That's the whole gimmick. Uh, there was also She-Hulk dealing with internet backlash. It's basically the the writers trying to uh, strawman their critics and just say they're all misogynist. Some of these comments say, "Oh, great, we got a female Hulk. Why does every superhero got to be turned into a woman? Or why is it just She-Hulk? Can't you be original? Or And I don't mind female superheroes, but try to come up with your own. I mean, that's not the problem with this show. I mean, everybody knew that She-Hulk is technically a derivative character, but she was well developed in the comics and was likable enough that everybody could get over that. The problem with the She-Hulk show is that it's poorly written. Despite being a comedy, it's not funny. The CGI is poorly done. And it's incredibly sexist and hypocritical. And it has some of the worst action scenes I've seen since Batwoman. And that's saying a lot. Uh, and the funny thing is that despite trying to make these people look bad, it has a lot of these tweets or whatever Instagram, whatever is social media platform is on. They have a lot of approval ratings. This is the part where if you wanted to make make your critics look bad, we'd show them being ratioed and have most of the audience disagree with it. But no, you have most of them agree with it. So you're trying to strawman these people, and you're failing. What are you doing, writers? What are you doing, Jessica Gal? Man, but anyway, let's focus on the main stuff. So Abomination, it tries to get his court appeal, and he pretty much says that he's promised he's not going to turn the Abomination. He just wants to live on the plot of land with his 7 soulmates, which some people thought was going to be the Thunderbolts, but it turns out it's just a bunch of hippies might be who might be Emil Blonsky's harem. Ish. But whatever. And naturally, the parole board is hesitant to release Emil Blonsky because they're feared that he might involuntarily turn to the Abomination. But he shows that he can turn the Abomination at will, but also change back. And I don't know if I mentioned this in a previous video or not, but this is again contrary to the comics, where the Abomination, when Emil Blonsky transformed the Abomination, that was permanent. He couldn't go back. It was one of the reasons why, in some versions, Emil Blonsky hated the Hulk. That's because he was stuck that way, and it kind of had negative effects on his life, especially with his wife Nadia. She thought he was a monster, and I also think that Emil Blonsky had a rocky relationship with her even before he became the Abomination. But I'd probably have to look back at that. But yeah, in the MCU, the Abomination could transform back and forth, but whatever. So so they decide to give the Abomination his parole, so long as he wears one of those power inhibitor collars. Yeah, the same power inhibitor collars that Hulk said was a prototype when he wore one, and said that it likely wouldn't be made. But apparently, Bruce Banner didn't have to do that because apparently other people had power inhibitors. And this kind of creates a massive plot hole because if there's access to power inhibitors, then every MCU project post She-Hulk is going to have to use these power inhibitors as well. Otherwise, we're just going to be asking, why aren't they using power inhibitors to stop these villains uh, that are running amok? Or why aren't you using power inhibitors to stop superheroes that are going against the Superhero Registration Act? I really, it really is frustrating to see that these writers didn't think this far ahead and don't understand the ramification of their actions. And back to the Megan Thee Stallion thing, uh, She-Hulk manages to prove that the other lawyer guy got deceived. He was really by making him seem really gullible, and the Asgardian uh, that was that pretended to be Megan Thee Stallion was also causing a little bit of pranks here and there, even shapeshifting to a judge, which yeah, that's a huge felony. And I believe they sent her to prison for 60 days. I'm pretty sure impersonating a judge would give you more than 60 days. And they might put you in jail for like a few years, at the very least. Let's get on with it. And so that problem is resolved. Oh, and also apparently Megan Thee Stallion was in the courtroom, pretty much. It's trying to yes, there's only one Megan Thee Stallion, which again I gotta point out, it's really odd that she calls herself Megan Thee Stallion because a stallion is a male horse. So it should honestly be Megan the Mare because she's female. Then again, apparently in 2022, nobody knows what a woman is. And then we cut to She-Hulk being ambushed by the Wrecking Crew. Now, if you saw my reaction video to one of the trailers, we saw that instead of the Wrecking Crew looking like a bunch of buff supervillains like they should be, they look like a bunch of generic, scrawny beta thugs. Like, seriously, this is our introduction to the Wrecking Crew? Now, granted, the Wrecking Crew is not some A-list villains team, but they do have some reputation to them. These guys have taken on the Avengers, Thor, Spider-Man, the X-Men, Hulk. Yeah, yes, the Hulk. I think She-Hulk's also fought the Wrecking Crew because, especially when they've teamed up with Titania and the Absorbing Man. Basically, every mainstay hero has fought the Wrecking Crew at some point, and they could have served as some sort of like mini boss for a for a real superhero, and, or at the very least, to some degree, might have been a main if you wrote them well enough, uh, a main threat against a supervillain, maybe like against Thor, since that was he was originally their enemy, uh, or against the Avengers or whatever. But no, She-Hulk pretty much takes them down like jobbers. And you gotta ask, why put the Wrecking Crew in here when you could have just had some random generic thugs in here and the results would still been the same? Now we're not so now is we're caught up with the same problem we've had with Titania. Why should we have these villains that were supposed to be taken seriously if the writers aren't going to take them seriously and treat them like a complete joke? They're complete jobbers. What if you want to use these in the future? We're not going to take them seriously. We're not going to care. And again, why are you making the She-Hulk seem like some kind of invincible Mary Sue when she should be struggling against some villains so we can actually have some engagement in the show? Some intrigue. I mean, I know the show is supposed to be a comedy and it's failing at that because it's not funny, but it's still a superhero show. There's still to be supervillains that can actually be proved to be a threat. I mean, you're not getting it from the Abomination, you're not getting it from Titania, and we're not getting it from the Wrecking Crew. What are we doing here, show? There's no action, no good action. There's no good jokes, so it's barely a comedy. What's the point of this show? Ugh. And was there anything? Yeah, the post credit scene. So, She-Hulk has decided to represent Megan the Stallion, and they end up having this little moment where they both start twerking in their office. Yes, you heard right. They start twerking in her office. You remember all those times that She-Hulk said that she didn't like being catcalled or being treated like a sex object, and yet she's doing something like this where her whole office could see her twerking and basically objectify her and have sexual thoughts about her. Yeah, it kind of makes her look like a massive hypocrite. And yes, I know She-Hulk has done some pretty stupid things in the comics, like um, getting fired because she decided to use a copying machine to Xerox her own butt. Just, I'm just saying, that's still not. If you want to be taken seriously and not be objectified, maybe don't do stupid stuff like this. Eh, yeah, I mean, it's not funny. And say, oh, but oh, you probably enjoy this because it's pretty hot watching She-Hulk and Megan Thee Stallion twerk. And maybe 1 or 2 years ago, I probably might agree with that point. But because I'm trying to repent of my sexual thoughts, trying to get right with God, that doesn't do anything for me. Um, so yeah, I'm not getting uh, arousing pleasure from this, and I'm not. I don't think it's funny. So this serves no purpose to me. It's just, it's just unfunny cringe. Uh, but yeah, I think that's pretty much everything I had to talk about this episode. It's another bust, and we only have like what, like 5 episodes left. I don't if the show can't doesn't have a good episode in 3 episodes, and yeah, that's pretty much a sign that this show isn't going to improve anymore. So I think we can pretty much write off She-Hulk as a bust. Uh, so yeah, that this episode was bad. Um, the humor is continuing to be not funny. The CGI is still a mess. The action is horribly done and very cheap, and it discredits a lot of classic Marvel characters that the general audience will not be able to take them seriously, and comic fans such as myself are just face palming at just how incompetent Marvel's and Jessica Gallo are being. And then we had this whole Megan Thee Stallion thing, which the writers seem to care more about than writing a good writing a good show, or at the very least a good episode. Uh, I wanted to, I wanted to quote the Bible just to have some semblance of intelligence, mentioning how Jesus said that neither idolaters, murderers, or the sexually immoral will inherit the kingdom of God. And I think that's a pretty good statement to leave off on, because seeing all this, I can understand why Jesus said that people like this won't be in heaven. So those were all my thoughts. You let me know in the comment section below what you thought of this episode. I'll catch you mortals later.